Welcome, everybody, to the Zero Shot podcast. It's AI in business without the hype. And today, it's our first episode. I'm here with Llew Jury. Llew, would you like to introduce yourself?
James, thank you. It's so good to be here and so pumped to be able to bring Zero Shot, the anti-hype AI podcast to the world and really, broadcast this everywhere. We've been really keen to do this. So my name's Llew. I'm the Managing Director of Advancer. We're an AI strategy and digital company. I've also got 30 years of experience investing in AI. I've built digital companies over the years and sold those companies, exited those companies. And just super pumped to be here. So good, James. Over to you, mate.
I'm James Gauci. I'm the CEO and founder of Cadent. Cadent is an organization that helps companies in high-risk sectors implement AI safely, responsibly, and in a way that represents ROI. So my background, I've got 15 years in tech, 10 years delivering AI systems for various kinds of organizations of various sizes. And I got the AI ethics and governance bug about 6 years ago, which made me a pariah amongst my software engineering friends for a short time. But when they realized I hadn't lost my pragmatism and my want to get things done as a kind of a delivery guy, they started to get on board. These days I'm advising governments and advising large organizations, but also smaller organizations in high-risk sectors on how to implement AI effectively in those kinds of scenarios. And I think we strike a pretty good balance, Llew, if I say so myself, between the needs of business and the needs of society and government and everything in between. What do you reckon?
We do, mate. We do. My focus is, as you know, around the small to medium business with a focus on that mid-market company that really needs AI strategy and, the optimal go-to-market planning for their AI agents and voice AI and all the things you need to do properly. And I think that sort of is why we're building this pod, right? And it's great to come together. I want to do a shout out as well to our producer, Llew, who's been awesome, and she's going to be with us on the journey. So awesome that Llew is coming on board, and super exciting times.
Yeah, thanks, Llew. You're a legend.
Yeah, she's awesome. So another quick segue. We've actually got sponsors. Episode 1, how good. We knew it was going to be good, but thank you so much. Our first sponsor and our foundation partner is Prompt Cowboy, the boys out of Sydney who are moving to San Fran soon. Hopefully I haven't revealed that too much, but there's lots going on with those guys.
Well, we'll have to send it over to see if there isn't an embargo or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. This episode's brought to you by and with thanks to promptcowboy.ai, the fastest way to turn everyday business tasks into automated workflows. If you've ever wished you had a digital ranch hand doing the repetitive work for you, Prompt Cowboy delivers. From AI prompts to full automations, it wrangles the hard stuff so you can focus on what matters. Head over to promptcowboy.ai and get your business writing smoother than ever. As an avid Prompt Cowboy user, I love it. I use it every day. I'm always training my clients on it. They just rap with it. We're building agent brains. We're building lots of amazing stuff. So
I was going to say,
promptcowboy.ai.
What's the strangest prompt that you've ever requested from Prompt Cowboy? Like, is there a pretty unusual use case that you chucked in there and see what it'd come out with?
Some of the crazy ones are when we're naming AI agents, we like to do it like Frank from finance or Eddie the email agent or, things like that. And often it's what my clients actually put into Prompt Cowboy and what Prompt Cowboy comes back with in terms of give me some names for an agent and things like that. There's some strange things that I won't repeat, but there's been some very interesting things over the years, with naming of certain AI agents. So I'm sure they've seen a lot of data. There's a lot of data now in Prompt Cowboy, and they're really kicking goals in terms of where they're heading with providing new platforms for people. And thanks so much to the guys, Matt and Henry over at Prompt Cowboy.
Thanks, guys. So maybe I'll ask you, Llew, what's the biggest vision that you have for this podcast, our podcast, Zero Shot, but not only as a podcast, but as something that, might be able to influence how Australian businesses see AI as an opportunity or a threat or any of the above?
Well, that's a good question, mate, isn't it? It's great to be here. Thanks to Yenny Larotta, our producer, actually, for putting all this together. And hopefully she's getting the perfect sound. I think this is a massive opportunity. I think if we go back to the paradigm of what powers Australia, that's business, right? And in Australia, businesses need the latest advice. They often don't know where to talk to, or who to talk to, where to go, what to even listen to, what podcasts to listen to, and I think Zero Shot has the opportunity to basically be very special for the Australian business community and also globally to really cement our position and the opportunity with AI. I think I talk to a lot of people all the time, every day, and they really need guidance on what to do next, where to go, what's ethical, what do they do at a board level, what do they do at a operational business level, what do they train their staff in, all of these things. And I think that's what the special thing about Zero Shot will be.
Yeah.
What about you, James? What about you?
That's a good question. I totally agree. We were doing some research for a grant application we made to the federal government a few months ago, and it was specifically about helping small and medium businesses in Australia adopt AI, but do it in a way that's responsible and consistent with their values and consistent with their priorities, both economically and socially. And one of the things that struck me was the fact that 98.8% of all businesses in the country are considered small and medium businesses. And when we say that small and medium business is really the engine room of the Australian economy, there's no shadow of a doubt about it. And if we can't seize this opportunity, like you say, in a way that spreads the benefits not just at the top end of town, but through the mid market and all the way down to small and medium and micro businesses, then we're missing a trick, because we are a developed economy. We have vast resources and we have a fantastic society. If we can't do it in a way that's responsible and safe and benefits everyone, then it's going to be really hard for countries that don't have the advantages that we have as well. So yeah, it's a really great opportunity to positively influence the discussion and the discourse, but also hopefully strip away some of that Silicon Valley bluster that we often get secondhand over here in Australia. We're a little bit more pragmatic, I think it's fair to say.
There's a lot of that. Isn't there? And there seems to be a lot of these pods that financial pods or their health pods, whatever, and they're all getting on the train of AI. Most of their episodes are about AI, and I think we need to have a couple of people, you and myself, talking to some great people, stripping it right back, as you say, and really highlighting the benefits to Australian businesses and where they can turn to next. And I think that stat about the 98%, I think it's something like 2.5 million or something, isn't it? There's 2.5 million SMEs in Australia. It's it powers the economy.
All right, Llew. If from your perspective, if this podcast, Zero Shot, becomes an important podcast for leaders this year or in 2026, we're recording at the end of 2025, but in 2026, what would you love people to say it helped them kind of understand or change or implement in their business? Like what is this an intervention for? What's our intention here?
I love the word intervention. What's the intervention we're making? We had a coffee, right? And we said, we need to talk. We got, similar clients. We need to go out there and spread the word, if you like, about what's really going on at the front of, the AI revolution. So that's a good reflection. I think, James, what I would love to see by the end of 2026 is the fact that there's been great AI adoption in the right ways and in the right areas of business, and I'm very passionate about it in business and doing business and investing in business myself, just like yourself, and I think a lot need to in 2026 really transcend the research phase of AI and the dabbling phase and putting the toe in the water phase and really go into activating true AI. And that might be, it's different levels for, different businesses, but I'd love, the smaller business, the micro business to say, you know what, I listened to you guys, I looked into some of the tools you mentioned, and I really enjoyed using them, and that's all I needed to power my business. There might be professionals like marketing professionals that, use tools like Canva AI features, or they use some of the latest Google products that really allow, image generation like VO or Nano Banana, and they might go, that was awesome. But there's also a really key group that I'd love, is that medium mid-market business in Australia to go, you know what, we had 50 or 500 or 5,000 licenses of Copilot, and we now know how to use it better, and we're actually adopted it, and it's more like an agent in our business. And that would be, really, really empowering, that we could help people with the tools and the tricks, but also, really for mid-market companies who are looking to compete globally, and they're sort of a lot smaller than global businesses that have that enterprise approach. What about you, James? What would be
Yeah,
your KPI?
I'll hark back to that coffee that we had, because we talked a little bit about the hype cycle, and how over the last kind of 2 years we've peaked, and then we've kind of descended a little bit, and now it very much feels like we're firmly in the trough of disillusionment. And generally, when you're in the trough of disillusionment, it feels like, oh, it's not all it was cracked up to be. All of the stories that we were being told by the wonderful sales execs at various companies, they didn't really come to fruition. And the MIT report comes out and says, yep, 95% of AI projects over the last year have failed across 54 organizations and 300 interviewees and blah, blah, blah. So it's almost like we're relearning the same lessons over again. And the thing about the hype cycle is, after the trough of disillusionment, it comes back up into normalcy, and the technology becomes just a part of doing business because it finds its niche within organizations. And so I think there's a level of skepticism in the market, especially in Australia. We don't quite have the level of trust in these systems that other countries in the world do. And I think rightly we have a little bit of fear and uncertainty associated with the technology. But when we translate the fear as an idea into business language, it's kind of just risk. It's uncertainty. We don't know what the future exactly is going to be, but we can kind of quantify what level of probability there is that something like that might happen, and we'll start to make business decisions based on that. So if we can take those things that make us fearful and reframe them a bit to be risk and associated reward, and then think like business people and go, okay, well, risk is just a part of doing business. How can we pursue opportunities with calculated risks using AI, and using AI in targeted ways as well, using all of the lessons that we've learned about digital technologies over the last 30 years, simple things like process management and the right tool for the right job, and bringing people on the journey, and that kind of stuff. I think we're going to see that a lot this year. And if we can contribute to that part of the conversation, I'll be really happy. I'll feel like we've moved the needle.
That's super cool. Super cool. So, James, I got a question for you. Where did the name Zero Shot come from?
Well, in evaluations of large language models, one of the things that one of the measures that is used on effectiveness of a large language model is whether or not it can get the answer in one go. Like you have you have 0 shots. So you can only have one go at
one crack.
One crack at answering the question. And when you're evaluating a model, it could be 0 shot, it could be 3 shot, it could be 5 shot. And that's where the evaluators of the model say, okay, well, we're going to give it 5 shots. And if it gets it one time out of those 5, we'll give it the full mark for that one. But that's a 5-shot metric. Whereas on a 0-shot metric, which is the hardest metric, that's where the LLM is only given the question once and has to get it exactly right the first time. And so it's an indicator of the quality of a model and the ability for it to infer user intent from the question, but also a test of its knowledge, the test of its training data, and of course it depends on the evaluation of the questions that are being asked. So it could be on maths, or it could be on coding, or it could be on language, or it could be on knowledge on a particular domain. But yeah, zero shot is getting the answer right in one go, and that's
kind of
certainly
like us, mate. Kind of like
Well-
us. We got zero shot, to get this podcast right. It's put some real, pressure on what we're doing, which is cool. And
Yeah,
I think people will assess us by that, right? You got zero shot at it in a very cluttered market with lots of static, lots of information coming at people every day.
I want us to have a bit of an unfiltered view, a pragmatic view, but also like a straight to the point kind of view, that doesn't beat around the bush as far as the marketing of a particular feature is concerned. Let's actually look at real use cases. Let's look at the real conversations that people are having and the real barriers to adoption and how we might address them as a business community in this country. And I think that's a pretty valuable conversation to be having. And getting it right in one answer. It's kind of the way that things are answered in 2025. I mean, if you can't fit it into a 30-second TikTok, you're probably not going to get listened to anyway, right?
That's right. It's probably a good time to mention our sponsors, the wonderful Prompt Cowboy. So this episode is brought to you, and with thanks to promptcowboy.ai, the fastest way to turn everyday business tasks into automated workflows. If you've ever wished you had a digital ranch hand doing the repetitive work for you, Prompt Cowboy delivers. From AI prompts to full automations, it wrangles the hard stuff so you can focus on what matters. Head to promptcowboy.ai and get your business riding smoother than ever.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Thanks to Prompt Cowboy, yeah.
It's nearly Christmas time. I think it's time we watch Die Hard, the movie. Yippee-ki-yay. Yeah, it is a Christmas movie.
Yippee-yi-yay. Yippee-yi-yay. I love it.
All right, what's
Awesome.
next? What's next, Jenny? What do you got for us? Mm-hmm. Do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I'll kick that one off. Yeah, zero shot. Imagine people saying zero shot changed how we think. What do we need to do each episode to make that possible? Yeah, I think we need to be authentic. I think there's a lot of hype. To James's point, there's a lot of people and talking about AI. There's a lot of clutter. There's a lot of things going on. People don't know where to turn to for authentic, real discourse, real challenge about AI. And we're both pragmatic realists. We know what's going on. James and I have known each other for a while, and we've seen a lot in our different perspectives. Me being sort of in the small business, the medium business, and the VC community, investing in AI. James being in the ethics, the governance, the sovereignty, the bigger piece. And I think, I think there's going to be people sort of saying, yeah, it changed how we think. We've got a couple of perspectives. Some of the guest speakers that have been really good in 2026 are really laying the groundwork to go, I'm going to really give this a crack. I'm going to really invest in AI. I'm not going to be fearful anymore. These guys are, giving me a bit of a roadmap. So that's how I'm going to, make sure that we've changed people's perceptions and hopefully we get people saying that by the end of 2026.
Yeah, I think something that is unique about both of us is that both of us have been builders, even though neither of us are programmers or would consider ourselves engineers. We're both enthusiastic builders of businesses and solutions and solving problems and things like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Llew, but I think that we can both say with confidence that we straddle both sides of that fence, where we can add value to a business conversation by bringing back some technical news from that front, and we can add value to the technical conversation by bringing back some news from the business front. And it's where the magic really happens, in that middle zone. And it's rare. I think it's rare, at least in my travels, that you get two people in a room who both have that dimension to them, and hopefully we can build a few of those bridges between those communities, because I don't know about you, Lou, but I get the strong sense that over the last couple of years, the engineers have been talking to the engineers a lot and the business people have been talking to the business people a lot, but there hasn't been a lot of cross communication and getting on the same page and speaking the same language. Has that been your kind of impression as well?
Yeah, definitely. Great take. Great summary on how I think that there's been a sort of a discourse, the sales and the business community and the evaluation, what they've been doing with AI is very different. And it's generally they get the investors on and the Silicon Valley piece, as you mentioned. And then you've got the engineers, probably a bit quieter, but, working away and a little bit more, I suppose, fearful in a way. Some of those roles in that world are a bit sort of fearful. I was at a AI debate, and I was in the affirmative that by 2030, AI is going to create more jobs than it disrupts. And actually, 75% of the audience disagreed with the affirmatives. They actually thought that AI is going to actually diminish jobs by 2030, and that was all a room of engineers. That was about 80 engineers who sort of rely on this as their daily wage and things like that. So I think there's been a bit of disconnection between the business community and the engineering community and the tech community. And I think, I agree. What we do is bring that together quite nicely, and hopefully everybody can get something out of it.
And in each episode, we don't even have to build the entire bridge, even if we just lay one plank of it so that we can advance the conversation, then
Right.
I'll be pretty fulfilled by that, I reckon. How about you?
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. I just want to make sure everybody's empowered and as we said, it's authentic content, and everybody gets something out of it.
All right, let's get into the topic du jour, which for us today is AI in Australia at a high level. And we thought that it was a good idea to kind of start the conversation here because this is the context that we're in. We need to understand where Australia sits as far as its relationships with other countries around the world and what regulation looks like and government support looks like and what the ecosystem looks like. And there's been a lot of news in the recent past in Australia about AI regulation and our approach to that. And it's going to have some pretty big implications for businesses and organizations of all kinds and sizes. I mean, Lou, from a business perspective and as somebody who's been working with small and medium organizations for a very long time in a technology context, what's the temperature out there like?
Yeah, the temperature, it's an interesting stage right now, and if we reflect on the sort of the government regulation piece of around, AI and what's going on, really all we can do is reflect on what's been happening with the US and Europe. Europe, I suppose, got a first jump last year, didn't they? And then the US has been really working it over this year, and it's been different with Trump and David Sachs, the czar of AI and all that sort of thing. And, I'm sure there's many people talking about, a regulation would affect a lot of things of many of those investors out there that have poured lots of money into AI in the US. It's now come home to roost in terms of Australia, and we've now got our own, I suppose, lens on it. And in the last few days, the federal government has actually announced, their AI direction, their AI policy for Australia. And there's lots and lots of commentary going on across my LinkedIn feed and across many of my different sources. And
Everyone's got an opinion at the moment, don't they?
Everybody's got a top three. Here's my top three things that are going to affect it. And it's the lens that someone comes from. And I think the temperature comes from the lens that you've got. For example, there was a CEO of a major data center company, and his top three things were, energy and data and infrastructure and things like that. If it's a business person, maybe the temperature isn't that high at the moment. It doesn't really affect me. I just use Copilot or use ChatGPT, and it doesn't. I'm doing my day to day, and it helps me write blog content. Awesome. I'm just going to get on with the next client. So I think the temperature is setting at different levels, but there's probably and a good question for you, James, is probably what's happening now, what's going to happen in the future, and getting the crystal ball out, really around what signal does this send about Australia's AI direction?
Yeah, the National AI Plan, which is the document that was released, I think just yesterday, I
I think
think
it
it
was
was.
yesterday morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
at the time of recording. And it's quite a different direction to what a lot of people who have been watching the AI legislation or AI regulation debate over the past 3 years kind of expected. Earlier this year, it came to light that after a couple of years of consultation, a particular direction that was being taken, which was based on risk and had a series of 10 guardrails, it was essentially being chucked out. And I think that was a lot to do with the geopolitical climate. There all of a sudden was a lot of uncertainty over in the US. There all of a sudden was a lot of just a lot of feelings of uncertainty about what the global economic outlook was going to be. And as a result, the government took a bit of a pro-productivity, pro-business kind of attitude in a pretty fast way to say that, okay, well, maybe we won't be as proactive or front-footed with, for example, the establishment of a new law about AI and having a regulatory body. And what this national AI plan has actually now enshrined is this idea that the government is now taking a bit of a hands-off position, and they're going to tweak existing laws as opposed to going ahead and creating new ones. Now, this has a couple of implications for business in particular. It means that there isn't a well-defined roadmap now. It means that it's really going to be up to businesses to come up with the ways that suit them to manage liability with respect to AI, because it's going to rely a lot on legal precedents and these various tweaks to different laws. But on the flip side, it means that there is a degree of freedom there. So while we're getting as businesses a lot more freedom, it comes with a lot more responsibility as well. As they say, with great power comes great responsibility, and it's no different in this situation. As business people, we're taking on a little bit more liability because we're going to have to determine how to actually solve this problem within our own businesses, as opposed to being given a highly specific roadmap from the government, for instance.
And probably a good segue into, like 10 years ago, we were focused on Turnbull's NBN, right? And the massive investment for that. And it's probably, good to reflect. Every 10 years, there seems to be a cycle about, a new initiatives that's coming. And I think we're at the start of what people started talking about when we were spending money on fibre optics, which didn't help because I just dropped out then, even though I upgraded to the new fibre optic system. But anyway, I'm sure your answer was perfect, so thank you. So I suppose, there's a critical piece around this about business, James, and why businesses should care about what the impact is on their, organisation. And so what do you think about government policy with the private sector and businesses? Because from what I see, businesses, as I said, they're not really focused on Australia's AI direction as a whole. They're not focused on our own LLM. They're not focused on, any of that. And it's like literally, I need to work on my day-to-day. I need to collect money in receivables, and I need to actually pay my staff and put food on my table. Why should business care about this? And I suppose what risks are there for businesses or boards, and what do they underestimate today?
Well, let's start with the opportunities. I think that's a good place to start, because this position that the government has taken represents a loosening of the guardrails for businesses. And so that is positive from the perspective of, okay, well, we trust business to do the right thing. We trust business to manage risk proportionally. We trust business not to break the law, et cetera, et cetera. But what the risk that it introduces is this risk of there's an associated risk where if you don't regulate strongly, it can introduce uncertainty. Right. And that uncertainty can filter through into consumer behavior as well. So the demand for AI-driven solutions, for example, could be lower than expected because the government hasn't taken a really strong and proactive position on, for example, having an actual AI law. But having said that, the opportunities are still there. And it's really down to, as a business, what our unique value proposition is in the first place, and strategically understanding where in that value chain using AI could actually add value for our customers. And something that is a feature of the plan is some really strong support for businesses, especially with respect to adoption for small and medium businesses. So we can reasonably foresee that there's going to be some strong capability development type stuff coming out from government. There might be some grants, there might be some programs, there might be some registers or things you can sign up for where they will support you. On the flip side, for the data center owners, there's going to be a lot of money. They've committed to the poles and wires of AI, so to speak, that they want to build a lot of compute capacity onshore in Australia, which leads into this kind of discussion about sovereignty, and whether, like, what extent do we want to be an AI country? Like, do we want to be building foundation models, or do we just want to be consuming foundation models? Do we want to be running them locally, or do we want to be running them offshore and consuming them that way? And so the position that the government seems to have taken is, we're going to invest in the infrastructure, which is good for our economy at this moment in time, and use that as a bit of a springboard to leap into the AI-based future. How that all kind of plays out, I'm unsure. There are a lot of critics of that approach, but interested in your view, Llew.
From my opinion, it's a bit like the Turnbull NBN. I'm glad we had that segue, because effectively the Turnbull NBN, there was people like, no, we should not spend the 70, 80, 90 billion or whatever it was at the time 10 years ago to build this new network and this fiber optic network. You don't have anybody crying about it now. You don't have anybody whinging that they've got, ultra fast broadband that's actually, pretty good. And Starlink seems to have solved a lot of the rural problems that were sort of touted 10 years ago. I don't think we need to invest the trillions of dollars that it's going to take into infrastructure to build massive data centers just for a generic AI world. We don't need to compete against that. Let OpenAI deal with the balance sheet problems they're going to have with the infrastructure costs and the nuclear power plants, that are the reactors. They're going to have to be built next to, those type of entities. Where we need to look at sovereignty is, one of my clients, for example, is a healthcare company, and we have to host any AI agents or anything to do with any of what their world is in Australia. Medical records need to be protected. They have to be hosted in Australia. And I think we need to do that piece. We need to do that piece really well. We need to lock it down. We need to look at the risks, as you say, and that will affect the data, the compliance and the operations for those type of businesses. The ones that don't really care, they can use models that are up in the US. They can, train on different models. If they don't have to have PII, personal information that's going out to the world, they're not scanning someone's driver's license to go for a test drive in a car, that's cool. Go and use a model that doesn't, need that. But for the companies like healthcare companies and sensitive information companies, we need to contain it in Australia, and that's only going to get bigger and bigger. And I think that's where we build the infrastructure.
There's a piece in there about 6 essential controls that the government wants businesses and organizations of all kinds throughout the Australian economy to adopt, and there are somewhat watered down list of what those original 10 guardrails were, which were going to be mandatory but are now very much voluntary, but are guidance in the same way that we might have seen in the past the Essential 8 in cybersecurity, for instance. That's right. The Australian Cybersecurity Directorate coming out and saying, all right, well, if you're a Microsoft shop, do these Essential 8 things and track your maturity and try and continually improve your maturity on that. And this seems to be the logical next step in that conversation, except within the domain of AI. Llew, you've been around businesses and around cybersecurity and managing those kinds of challenges for a long time. What have you seen out on the front lines? What has businesses' attitude been towards frameworks like the Essential 8, which aren't mandatory but are very strongly recommended?
Most businesses, initially don't care. They really, they get on with their day job, as I said, and they're very focused on actually the problems in their inbox. I've got a problem with a customer, or a delivery didn't get done, or whatever it is. To actually go, I need to consider an AI, program of work that I need to adhere to, that thou shalt do it. It's legislation based. If it becomes legislation, it becomes baked into the auspices of what we have to do as a mandatory requirement. Then that will be a different discourse. This will be on a national level. It will be about, talking about, referendums or things like that, because I think Australians, are very open to change. But then when push comes to shove, they don't like to be pushed into any regulation. Guide is a good word. And I think protecting my business is the priority, rather than protecting the sovereignty of the AI policy of Australia. So I actually think we're just at the start. We're at, literally 1 minute past midnight. And it's going to change. I think people will start to really, become quite, they're going to become up to speed with it very quickly. We're going to see this happen at a rate of knots. I've seen it also happen with one of my investments, which is basically helping companies with Scope 3 carbon emissions. And there was government directives saying, and legislation saying, anybody over $1 billion needs to get it done by this date. Anybody over 500 million needs to get it done by this date. And companies have missed it. Like, they've missed those timelines. It's a bit like some of the banks adopting certain pay walls or pay providers and things like that. They haven't hit those milestones. There's been reasons why they haven't. So I think, at the very front end, we need both sort of camps. We need the government certainly providing guidelines and getting cracking with that narrative. But, we've just got to remember that business is probably, looking at leadership and ownership issues that are very different to what the federal government in Canberra are thinking about.
Yeah, the economic situation globally makes these kinds of conversations kind of a little bit more emotionally charged than they would have been at other points in history, potentially, from my perspective, where we talk about good practices or better practices or best practices, and if you're going to be adopting or trying to adopt best practices, you're probably making a bit of money. You've got some discretionary capital to throw around for a particular program to increase your maturity or what have you. But I am completely understanding of organizations who I literally had last year, the chief product officer of a VC-backed AI company said, James, I love AI ethics. I love what you're doing, but we just can't afford to have ethics right now. Now, I have a lot of things to say about that particular quip that person made, but deciding not to have ethics is an ethical position, whether you like it or not. And that's why in our business, we're often talking about how can we do things by design, because what we learn as software engineering teams is that a problem solved in design costs 90% less than a problem solved after deployment. So if we're deploying stuff now that we know isn't up to par, we're going to pay the cost later. There's going to be technical debt baked in. There's going to be governance debt baked in, just poor customer experiences that are going to lead to churn in our customer base, et cetera, et cetera. So it requires some nuanced thinking. And to your point, Llew, it's not every organization that has to pay attention to these specific things at this specific point. But I think there will come a time where they become hygiene factors. And that's certainly the stated strategy of the government. They're setting a high watermark for themselves. They've set, they're all going to have a chief AI officer. They're going to have their assurance frameworks. They're going to start talking about ISO 42001 as the standard that is currency when working with government with respect to managing AI systems. And their hope is that will osmote into the economy. And so while right now it certainly feels discretionary, the government's hope is that once we get out of the economic woods a little bit, we might start thinking a little bit more with our head rather than our heart in the longer term.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to finish this episode. And, thanks, James, for that. And I totally agree. It's early days, but it's super important. And we'll keep raising this throughout the thematics of this amazing opportunity, which is Zero Shot. So, next episode, James, you want to do the teaser for the next episode before we thank our listeners?
Yeah, mate. Next episode, that'll be after the break in 2026. Our first episode is December of 2025. So we're going to have a little bit of a break, but we're going to go a layer deeper into the real implications of Australia's shift. We talked about capability building, we talked about risk, but let's actually think about making the rubber hit the road and what leaders should do next in their businesses and their organizations. So I'm looking forward to that one, Llew. How about you?
Oh, definitely, mate. All about what business leaders need to do. And this is why we've got this podcast up and running, right? And just helping them out. So, yeah, definitely subscribe. But thank you to everybody for listening to this first episode. And any feedback to James or myself via Yenia, please send it through. Before we go, we want to thank promptcowboy.ai. Today's episode is proudly supported by promptcowboy.ai, helping businesses harness AI without the guesswork. Prompt Cowboy has you covered, and so thanks to them for powering this show. And right on over to their site and discover how much time you could be saving. So,
yeehaw, Prompt Cowboy.
Yeehaw. Thanks, Prompt Cowboy. Yeah, absolutely. Let's follow us up on social media. So we're going to have all the channels live pretty soon. Go and follow us, chuck us a follow, and give us any feedback. James, it's been awesome, mate. What a way to open, and super pumped for 2026 and catching up again weekly. This is going to be a weekly podcast.
It's going to be a big year. Really looking forward to it, and thanks again to Yenia for jumping in on production on this. It's going to be an exciting ride.
Thanks, listeners. Thanks, James. Talk soon.
Thanks, guys.